So could you tell us a bit more about your journey to study science and how it was like working as a scientist in South Africa? And once you graduated, and what barriers did you experience working in science in that environment? And on a different note, was it mostly lab-based, or did you have opportunity to work in the beautiful African savannas? Sorry, it's a very long-winded question.
Uh, so after I obtained my honors degree, I managed to get a role as a research scientist at the Onderstepoort Veterinary Institute. Um, but I was given the job of establishing a molecular biology lab. Now, if I look back on my, sort of what happened to me at that time, I'm just amazed that people would have such high expectations of somebody coming in with an honors degree. Now, again, remember that I graduated many, many years ago. So the only exposure I've had to molecular biology at the time was some theory that we did around cloning and transfection and that type of thing. So very little practical experience. So really being thrown into the deep end. I got a job in the foot and mouth disease laboratory at the Onderstepoort Veterinary Institute, and had to buy equipment, had to plan how to lay, how we're going to establish the laboratory. At that time, we were doing all the work with radioactive materials, so also had to, work out how we're going to dispose of that. But the biggest job I was given was then to look at the molecular epidemiology of foot and mouth disease virus in Southern Africa, which meant that I had to do sequencing directly from RNA viruses. No PCRs in that time, people, so directly sequencing from RNA, and it was really a tough gig. So after months and months and months of really busting myself, I just had no success, absolutely no success. So my boss of the time called in a professor from the university to come and see if he can help. And we went through everything that I'm doing. And this was one of those sort of pivotal moments in my career where this professor turned to my boss in front of me and said, "You know what, Gavin, I think you've hit a dud here. She's not going to be able to make it." So, I mean, obviously that was heartbreaking. I had to fight back the tears at the time and left the meeting really broken after having worked so hard and tried so hard and to be called a dud. Um, that I then a few days later went back to my boss and said, "Can we talk about this? Because I've really tried. I've really done everything that I think I could do. Um, I just don't know what's wrong." So my boss then decided to send me to a laboratory in England, which we should have done right from the beginning. I went there for, it was about a 3-week period. And what we realized in the end was that there was a mistake in the primers that I'd ordered, but not a mistake that I'd made. It was made by the company. Because again, in those days, there wasn't the quality control that we have nowadays. So once I returned, reordered everything, voila, everything worked beautifully. And that set my career off then, sort of looking at the epidemiology of foot and mouth disease in Southern Africa. So I quickly also just want to just share this photo with you. And after we've all sort of wiped the tears away from the bad hair choices, and I mean, look at the shoulder pads. People at that time, we all wore shoulder pads under everything. But I received the award for the best scientist on the site for a 2-year period. So obviously had made sort of sufficient progress to actually reach a stage where I could receive an award. And that then led me to sort of realizing I can do this. I then wanted to have a little bit more exposure to the virus in the field because I realized that I am working in the laboratory, but I'm working with a disease. I'm working with something that affects animals and affects people's lives. So I went to my boss again and I said, I would really like to go and do some field work because the laboratory was running some projects in the Kruger National Park and wanted to see what's happening in real life. So my boss said to me, no, you can't, you're not a vet. And I said, but I don't think I need to be a veterinarian to be able to do that. And he said to me, well, what is the differential diagnosis for foot and mouth disease? And I had no idea what he was saying. So I left the office and then decided, well, then I'm going to find out. So first of all, I'm going to find out what is a differential diagnosis. And in the pre-Google days, of course, we had to go to the library, do some research. But a week or so later, I knocked on his door and I said, well, the differential diagnosis for foot and mouth disease is blue tongue, lumpy skin disease, rinderpest. Can I now go to the field, please? And he reluctantly then agreed. And that's set off my career also in a direction where I did quite a lot of field work, but then also laboratory work. So let me just see if I can change the slide. So these are the animals that I then turned out sort of working with. So the African buffalo, the warthog, the bush pig, impala, giraffe, and then also farm animals. And it's always been sort of a big value to me that I could actually sort of work in real life with animals and seeing the disease, also spending time in outbreaks on farms, etc. So
Yeah.
yeah, can I maybe just also add that, at that time, there were very few female role models for me to follow. I was in a very male-dominated area. I was one of the very first sort of females getting into management and leadership positions. And I remember one meeting that I attended on behalf of the director of the institute. And one of the other directors came to me and said, so girly, what are you doing here today? So having had all these experiences just make you grateful for how far we've come over time. So 16 years ago, I managed to get a position at CSRO. And I actually received it as a result of me having foot and mouth disease experience. So Australia is not allowed to import or work with live foot and mouth disease virus in the country because we have been free of the disease for nearly 150 years. But it's one of the biggest threats to our livestock industries. And we have to have the capability, but we can't really work with a virus. So the idea is to then hire experts who can come and ensure that Australia can remain prepared. And I then was very lucky that for 10 years we had really good funding from the industries to work on foot and mouth disease. But because we can't work with a live virus, we had to work overseas. So there's been a lot of collaboration and doing the work overseas, as well as a lot of traveling. So, and as a result of my job, both in Australia and in South Africa, I have been to about 55 different countries. And it's, again, one of the experiences in my career that's just been so amazingly enriching, being able to, travel so much. So I am going to share my screen again if I don't press the leave button like I've done before, and just show you some of the photos of the travels that I've had, which of course now is, so so here are just some photos of where I've been in South Africa, Uganda, and Rwanda. And I want to point specifically to that photo there of the ladies that you see being bent over there. They are collecting dung, cattle dung, at a marketplace so that they can put that in the floors of their huts. And I will come back to them later because that to me has been such a lesson in life. So here I'm also in Uganda, Saudi Arabia, in the Tropic of Capricorn in South Africa. And then when I started working at CSIRO, we had to go overseas to do work. So we're working there in Vietnam. But I've also done consultancies for the FAO and for the World Organization for Animal Health. And that had taken me to places like India, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, where I had to eat horse head and lots of horse meat. And our truck got stuck in the mud because the snow had been melting. And also some work that I've done in Malaysia. So really some very exciting places and things that I have been able to do. So I'm now sort of at my stage in my career where I've sort of had a really, really good and exciting career. And I've sort of moved from science to people a little bit. I'm now at that stage in my career where it gives me so much more pleasure to invest in other people and to be able to give other people the opportunity to excel and to grow. And I think that's why I am really very passionate about mentoring. And I know, Jojo, that we were going to sort of talk about mentoring, but if you don't mind, if I sort of just flow into that. If I look at my own career, I really wish that I had been more proactive in seeking mentors. It was just not something that was spoken about at the time. And as I've mentioned, I've had very few female role models in my career to actually follow. And I really want to encourage people to take this up, take up the opportunities to learn from others, because we're never on our journeys alone. So, and I know sometimes people feel sort of scared around mentoring, but it's sometimes as easy as seeing a trait in somebody that you admire. And then why not reach out to that person and say, for example, what I've done to say, I've looked at the way that you manage meetings and workshops, and you really seem to be able to do that so effective. And I'd like to just get a few tips and tricks from you. How do you do that? But it could also be a more longer term relationship that you build with somebody who could help you with your networking and, you know, with solving issues and problems at work. And it can be professional, it can be personal. It's so good to have a soundboard to go and talk to. And but we have to be a little bit more proactive. Now, something that we've also started here at ACDP was a mentorship program. So pre-COVID, we actually worked with a learning and development team at CSIRO where we developed a whole mentorship program for the site to make people aware of, you know, what a mentor does, what's expected of a mentee, and trying to link people. And I think one of my biggest surprises is that we're not getting very, very good take up by that. So if I can today just sort of leave that message to say to people, please, this is a gift that's given to us. And I still need to meet the person who would say, sorry, I'm not interested to help you with something. Mostly people are so willing to share their learnings with everyone else. And please utilize that resource because it can mean so much to your career. Thank you. Thank you so much to Marina and Stephen. So the reason that I've asked them to join us is I'm sort of now, you know, towards the pointy end of my career. But we have two people here who are in different stages of their career. So Stephen is an early career scientist. Marina is sort of more our mid-career scientist. Stephen is in the situation where he's a CERC fellow in CSIRO, so he's been assigned a mentor. So he has that experience where, bless Cyril for having put this in place to ensure that people are assigned mentors. I think it is an amazing initiative, but he has that experience, whereas Marina has had different experiences. And again, as I say, sort of in her mid-career. And I know that both of them have sort of stories that they can tell you about leadership. So Marina, you are off mute. So shall we start with you, and you can tell us a bit about your experience in terms of mentorship along your career.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks, Wilna. And thanks, Michelle, for organising this great event. Yeah, so as Wilna mentioned, I'm a mid-career research scientist, also at ACDP. So I get to see Wilna a lot, which is lovely. And I'd just like to say it's a real privilege to have a mentor. People like Wilna have many responsibilities. So for them to carve out time in their day for meeting with mentees is really great. But because they have all these responsibilities, they often have really great contacts and networks and wisdom to help you navigate a career in science. And that's what I've found, certainly with Wilna. I did reach out to her because, yeah, I saw some of the ways she worked in our organisation and respected that and wanted to learn and go in that direction. So she's also a great listener and very nurturing, and has deep knowledge in animal health, and which is an area I work in. And yeah, I also appreciate the opportunity to get feedback on what I've got going on now with my career, but also planning for the future. Yeah, so you can have, different mentors. Some might be specific to understanding more about a particular field that you've found yourself working in. Maybe you want to get contacts in a particular network, and you can use a relationship with a mentor to help you gain those. Or indeed, a role model with a similar protected attribute. So might be also being a woman, or same religion or cultural background, and, someone you can really connect with. So I think the relationship needs to be two-way. So yeah, it's really nice to spend that one-on-one time with your mentor and understand what they might be getting out of the relationship as well, sharing their hobbies or expertise in a particular topic. And yeah, you can build a relationship that way. So yeah, I think that's what I'd like to offer about menteeship.
Marina, thanks. We haven't, I mean, I'm not going to drop you into this one. I'm so sorry. How do you feel about peer mentoring as well? Because quite often we sort of think that mentorship should be, a more senior person or so, but peer-to-peer mentorship also plays an important role. And what's been your experience around that?
Yeah, I think that's something really important to bring up. Yeah, peer-to-peer, so similar experience, or even someone who's younger than you can learn so much, or earlier in their career than you can learn so much from them. Yeah, and that can be set up. I certainly have those people in as colleagues, but we haven't defined it as a mentor-mentee relationship, but it kind of is. And yeah, it's, you might not label it as such, but yeah, it's something to nurture, and definitely something that you can help to forward your career and do good science.
I mean, you're touching on something that I haven't mentioned, and it is that quite often these relationships are not necessarily defined as mentorship. But when you look back at it, or when you sort of just stand back a little bit, and you realize that quite often it is a mentorship relationship, but it doesn't have to be this sort of very official agreement between people. And the other point that you've touched on that I should have mentioned is also the value for the mentor in this relationship. I have learned so much from my mentees because we are all on journeys together, and we are always, there's just so much value in sharing each other's journeys and learning from each other. So for anybody on the call who may be then approached to be a mentor, remember that it is such an enriching experience, and that you're going to get so much out of it as a mentor, that it is just an absolute privilege. And Marina, thank you for all the nice things you've said. I mean, I didn't ask you to come online to say nice things about me, but thanks.
It seems fitting, and it's all true. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Stephen, as I say, you sort of slightly in a different career stage, and you were assigned a mentor. So yeah, we're also curious to hear what your experience had been so far.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Wilna and Marina, for sharing your experiences. And thanks for having me here today. So what's it like being a mentee? Well, my experience is I joined CSIRO just over a year ago now, and I was informed that as part of the CERC Fellowship, I was required to have a mentor. And I guess at first I wasn't really sure what the mentee-mentor dynamic or relationship looked like, as I'd never really had an official mentor outside of supervisors, postdocs in the lab. And for me, those relationships had largely been about developing my research skills. And so I wasn't really sure at this point what I could get out of the experience. So I decided to turn up to my first meeting with Wilna with an open mind, and raise the question, what can I get out of the experience? And we chatted about how we could make the most of our meetings. I went home, decided it would be most useful for me to focus on the areas which I'd perhaps neglected in the past, as I hadn't really had the chance to talk in depth about these areas in a constructive and supportive environment. Wilna and I chatted about various topics, including project management, leadership skill development, amongst others, which I found very useful. And one day we decided together to focus on the topic of networking. Now, I remember one conversation with Wilna where she pointed out that it is useful to look at your next steps in your career and then make a networking plan based on people already in these jobs and mutual contacts, and take a more kind of a more proactive approach rather than a passive one. And I said, well, Wilna, I'm unsure what it is I'd like to do next. I've studied and worked hard in order to get a job working in research with infectious diseases, and now I'm here. And that now I'm not totally sure what that next move is. So I didn't really know where to start to make that decision. As in the past, I'd always gone with a job I was passionate about, or what was available at the time, and it just all felt very reactionary to me. So I went home that day and reflected on our conversation, thinking of ideas of how I could approach this, and be more proactive with career planning and networking. And I started to ask myself questions like, what do I value in my career? Whether that be stability, work-life balance, personal development, passion for the role, and or a job which pays well. And then I asked myself, am I achieving these currently? And also, how can I maintain this going forward and achieve more in future roles? And these were the roles which I then decided would help focus on some key areas to guide my networking plan. I took this back to my next meeting with Wilna to discuss making networking plan based on my answers, and this is still in progress at the moment. So I guess to kind of summarize, overall, I've found our conversations to be very useful and have helped guide me to approach things from a different perspective and in a proactive rather than a reactionary manner. And with that, I guess the answer to the second question, what advice I would give to others, one is to choose a mentor that you feel comfortable with, go in with an open mind, discuss with your mentor what you'd like to achieve out of the experience, and really make these meetings about what would benefit you the most. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephen. And you are sort of the dream mentee who goes back and thinks about things and I can highly recommend, if anybody wants to sort of look at a networking plan and how to think about your future, please go and talk to Stephen, because he has come up with a fabulous outline of how you can approach that difficult issue. So thanks for sharing, Stephen.
Thank you.
Wrap up. And just before I hand over to you, Susan, I just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you, Wilna. Thank you, Marina and Stephen and Chow Chow and Vernice and all of the behind the scenes Staff Association members for helping today. And of course, for everyone for attending. We'll put back up on the website our Staff Association web address for anyone that wants more information. And Wilna, did you want to say, or Marina or Stephen, did you want to say a quick goodbye to everyone before I pass over to Susan to close this up?
Can I still promise that I will come back to those ladies picking up the dung. So just want to say that, you know, I've spoken about my career and the challenges that I've had, you know, with, you know, a stereotypical society when I was younger. But when you see something like that, where women work, there's no opportunity for education, for furthering a career, not even a dream of a career, you just realize how privileged we are. And that is what quite often happened to me during my career, where I did travel and so on. And I was just starkly reminded that we are incredibly privileged in where we are and the opportunities that we've had. And I want to just, you know, finish off by thanking everyone along my career path for what they've meant to me and the inputs that they've had and the opportunities and privileges that I've had. And thanks, Michelle, for having us, and thanks for the Staff Association for giving me the opportunity to do some navel gazing. It was really, it was good for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilna. I'll hand over to Susan for our final goodbye.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks hi everyone. Look, all huge thank yous, obviously. Everyone's thanking each other today, which is very well deserved. And big thank you to Wilna and the other presenters today for speaking, and also for Michelle, who does this for us every year, gets it all in motion and gets it going. The Staff Association is proud to be able to facilitate this event, you know, which is annual, and we're now up to our 4th year of this running. And it's inspiring to see that the attendance for this, the Women and Girls in Science event forum, grows every year, and all the amazing different areas of science and subjects that we're starting to cover and the different people that we're seeing across CSIRO. Great discussions from on mentoring from Marina and Stephen. I mean, you've certainly shown the high value of those types of programs in your workplace and how important they are, and especially in the work that you do. You certainly need to have something like that in place for you. I won't hold everybody up because I know everyone is time poor, but I just wanted to say we're really looking forward to seeing this this forum continue onwards, and I look forward to seeing everybody at the next one in March 2026. So if any of you are inspired by this to be the lead speaker, make sure you let Michelle know ahead of time, and we can organise it. And yeah, it'll be all your photos up there, and inspiring and mentoring others. So thanks everyone. Really appreciate your attendance.
Thanks all and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.